Сегодня мы с вами будем говорить о заключительном блоке беспокоящих нас вещей. И напомню, что вы сегодня нечаянно стали частью небольшой конференции, почти научной, очень для нас, для всех важной, которая посвящена теме музей, перформанс, человек и тому, как эти трое связаны с самым главным, с городом. Все вы, наверное, видели, как на глазах изменился этот город. Кому-то это кажется справедливым, кому-то нет. Кто-то считает, что лучше бы дали бы возможность обезболивать раковых больных, а кому-то нравится такая трата денег. Кто-то считает, что красиво широкие тротуары, кому-то нравится парк Зарядье, а кто-то считает, что в нем сразу завяли все цветы. У всех свои взгляды на вещи, и мы для того здесь собрались, чтобы выяснить, почему некоторые город любят, а некоторые ненавидят, и почему так или иначе в какой-то момент весь город начинает петь, танцевать и свистеть под дудку одного отдельно взятого человека, который взял этот город заново перепридумал. И сегодня здесь собрались люди, которые именно что и делают так с разными городами, не только с Москвой, поскольку мы не очень сегодня москвоцентричны. Напомню содержание предыдущих серий. В субботу мы здесь собирались для того, чтобы поговорить о том, как так бывает, что возникает новый музей или какой-нибудь музей куда-нибудь переезжает, и сразу город за этим музеем устремляется, бежит сломя голову, делает все так, чтобы все поняли, что в городе самое главное, музей. А бывает и такая ситуация, что какой-нибудь человек придет на главную площадь и в течение нескольких минут сделает что-нибудь такое, после чего этот город
he or she creates something which changes the city forever, and that's a performance that can leave a scar or a medal of honor on the body of the city. And now we are discussing the individual, the third important element of this system. And the individual is basically an inventor, an artist, a good manager, or maybe they are making money by doing this, because sometimes a city allows an individual to make money from this. And we are going to discuss all the aspects of human talent in the city's body. We have three topics today, and the first topic is city institutions and the way in which they allow the city to move forward, to gentrify further. The second topic is the square, the fair, the mall, and what public art, publicly accessible art can change in this context of the city, in city environment. And the last subject for today is the festival. The festival as a change of the city's fate, and what changes when an iconic regular event comes to a city, be it a biennale, an annual or a seasonal event. And here we've got the best people to answer these questions, to tell us about their pride, their cities, their neighborhoods. So the creative director and partner of Stereotactic, producer of the biggest in the Eastern Europe raves, festivals, electronic music, marketing events, and so on. And you have all heard about this, and you have visited this all, and maybe didn't have the tickets. Alexei Demarsky. Please welcome. We're not going to talk about the Outline Festival, although this is a delicate issue for many of you, but no, we're not highlighting this. The second speaker today is the person who is not in Moscow especially for our conference. He came at the invitation of VAC Foundation, which produced and curated something that you should definitely visit like tomorrow, because it's the last day of the exhibition of Tino Segal and the program that this person invented and composed. This is the exhibition of Tino Segal VAC Live, and the person in question is responsible for all the educational events, workshops and talks. I was also taking part in them lately. It was interesting and frightening at the same time. And it's Rio Rutzanger, this person who invented the whole educational and very interesting part of the Impulsdance in Vienna. Impulsdance is one of the most important events in Europe, which is visited by all people who are anybody in the world of dance every summer. Rio Rutzanger is the artistic director of the Impulsdance Festival in Vienna. Please welcome. In these 3 days, I remember my days as a TV presenter 15 years ago, and now I'm reinventing the skill of public talking. That's life for us. Now, next to me, an individual whose presentation you visited yesterday, and this was an important event for us because we now have understood the connection between the prehistory and current issues. It's the person with whom I became friends when he was working at Watermill Center in New York, founded by Robert Wilson, and there another artist present here also created contacts with him. And then Jorn became the director of the Luminato Festival, which is the largest festival in the whole Americas region in Toronto. It's a lifestyle building festival, and now he's working in Los Angeles, where he's the artistic director of Music Center LA, which is the same as Lincoln Center in New York. And many of you who have visited LA were there. Jorn Weisbrod. Another important character who is going to talk today is this same artist who has managed, without any doubt, reinvent a commercial environment as an artistic environment. If people have a lot of money and they believe that art is genuinely capable of changing the environment, then they absolutely have to call Andrei Bartenev and invite him for a performance. And then Andrei will come, and some shopping mall will become a realm of his images of hunters, fishermen, seals, deer and reindeer and other animals native to his city of Norilsk. This master of public art, Andrei Bartenev. I have some personal issues with you, Ilya, because a lot of people said that during the last Met Gala in New York, there was only one Russian artist, and it was Sila Sveta. Anna Vintour invited this team personally to create a light installation for this grandiose event. And I also was there in a glass cube, and so there were 2 Russians there. The guys got money and fame, and I got in jail. And that's why we meet you. Today you are the design director for the Sila Sveta company. An object of admiration from my side, Ilya Balakirev, please welcome. And last but not the least, here we've got the person who is not as public and not as visible everywhere, but this is a person without whom not a lot of things can happen. And fortunately, this person is able to sit here on the sofa while a lot of assistants are rushing here and there, building stages, building those magical backgrounds, help fireworks explode at the VDNH, arrange exhibitions at the Pushkin Museum. That's what this person and their family do. And I'm really happy that today a person is present here that was the executive producer for the opening and closing ceremonies for the Sochi Olympics, and now is going to work on the World Cup in football. He's one of the biggest event makers in Europe, especially in Russia. He's number 1, Andrei Nazonovsky. Yeah, and now, really the very last but not the least person. Not everything is concentrated about Moscow in today's talk. There is a city close by Moscow. We hear about it now and then, and it is a pleasant alternative to the Moscow centrism. And we all know that Yaroslavl has got textile industry, and textile industry has got Yaroslavl, and maybe we're going to leave the Moscow discourse today, and we'll begin with it. And here is the curator for the social cultural projects in the regional creative initiatives agency in Yaroslavl, Yulia Krivtsova. Please welcome. And so, Yulia, let's begin with your contribution, because we're not now going to talk about the way in which institutions affect the mechanism of the city, how the centrifuge of the city begins rotating faster as long as somewhere close to the center of life of the city an alternative emerges. And what's interesting, I was walking from Vinzavod to Art Play Center in Moscow, and I saw a lot of cafes there, a lot of hipsters renting flats there, and it used to be a hellhole not long ago. And Moscow is not the best example, because a mogul and oligarch can live close to poor families in the same building. At least they're not coming in their Maybachs to dilapidated houses. But this is a good example, because Yaroslavl changed completely as long when the textile community emerged there. Well, I personally like the idea of an oligarch and a poor student living close by, because our project is not about creating the best city on earth, not about creating the best cultural institution for the best people in the world. No, rather, the cultural center TEXTIL creates a space for life and space for attraction for different people, for diverse people, for people who happen to be nearby, for those who are curious and interested in this. I have worked in a non-profit organization for more than 11 years. I'm beginning with this because I want you to understand that this project of Cultural Center was initiated by a non-profit organization. We create socio-cultural projects which are at the crossroads between contemporary culture and city identity. In Yaroslavl, there is one more objective for us. We want to offer, especially for younger people, to offer them to see more opportunities existing in the city, so that they are able to take part in its life, to do what they were lacking before. Not run away in search for this, but create it where you happen to be directly. That's why for us Yaroslavl is important, because the word begins with the Russian word for me, ya. It means that there is an element of me in the city, and it allows you to change the city and to challenge it. Yaroslavl has 1,000 years of history behind it. It is the capital for the Golden Ring of Russia. It is a UNESCO heritage site. And during its whole history, it has positioned itself as a city of churches, of monasteries, of cathedrals. And of course, the city center is the place where a lot of forces converge. Political forces, commercial forces, non-profit forces. And we felt it, that we don't want to go out to the central square, to the central park of the city. We want to look outside of this horizon of the historical center and understand that there is one more perspective to the city. There is one more historical district in the city, and it's completely different. It's red brick, industrial, dilapidated, not needed to anyone. But we felt that potentially this place can become the second center, the second heart of the city. Its new trademark notion. With different notions, with different meanings. It can become a commercial center, it can become a manufacturing center. And that's how we happened to be in this district. Now it's called the Krasny Perikop. It's a Soviet times name. Before that, it was the factory premises of the textile factory. It was founded in Peter the Great's time. We came there in 2013. It's a unique compound of industrial buildings, and we wanted to remove this black stain on the map to make this place visible for people living nearby. We understood that we don't want visited on a Zeppelin. We don't want to come there for a day, for a festival, for a holiday with fireworks and so on. We want to root in this building, in this territory, and step by step, in a monotonous manner, in a boring way, just change this space little by little, starting from one point, to create these circles on water, radiating from this point, for changes to happen. We didn't want to have fireworks. We wanted to have a city square where we could put a fireplace which would warm people gathering around it, not for a day, but for a long time. And that was the strategy with which we began creating a culture center in this district. We called it the TEXTIL because it has to do with the textile manufactured there before, and we understood as the place where various threads come together, various people, ideas, initiatives for new projects to emerge. And we understood that people who have ideas to challenge the city, or maybe want to complain about something in the city, that they will be able to join us in this space and offer their own agenda, offer their own vision of the city. We had an arrangement with the factory to use their former warehouse, and first of all, we removed the barbed wire, opened the gate, and allowed people from outside to peek in, to come in, and if they want to join us in tidying up the place. And this was a conscious step on our side. Instead of big construction, instead of big investment, we wanted to build up the relationships with the management of the factory, with the people in the neighborhood, to create a team, to connect to the city administration, to various stakeholders, to come to an agreement mutually what this place should be and why the city needs it. First, we created in the courtyard between two buildings, we created this public place, this square, city square for people to come, to make friends, to exchange information, to collaborate. And on the other hand, at the same time, we believed that it would be wrong for the space which we were creating behind a fence, which we could not remove by then, for it to remain spiritually, mentally behind a fence, to remain fenced. And so, opposing to the gate, we saw a park where we began building a space for the teenagers from the neighborhood. And this connection through children and teens, through their parents, through their grandparents, this connection was able to be established, and we got some cred and some trust credit that could be used later. People were wondering how an exhibition center could be built in a warehouse. But still, the fact that we were able to invite partners and friends from other cities, from other countries, it was fueling our idea that this amazing space of the warehouse can be turned into a museum, a theater, a concert hall, a culture center, because that's how it was working in the late 19th century, when the owners were creating this warehouse. They were not just creating a warehouse, they were creating an environment for people living and working there. The workers making those textiles were living in a special environment. It was important for the owners. And that's why we made these city weekends. The city weekends which happened every month, once every month, instead of going for the dacha or going to the shopping mall, people could visit this place. People don't like visiting other places, meeting unfamiliar people in the city. And here they did just that and enjoyed that. They learned about new initiatives, new interesting people in the city. And these city weekends were taking place and have been taking place until now, since the very beginning of our project. Once or twice a month they happen. For us it was important not to make it exclusively for younger people, for example. We're happy to see elderly people here, parents with small children, youngsters, and they all learn to see each other. They learn to understand and accept each other. And that's an important exchange for us. And for me, this is a melting pot of people living in the city. You really can feel what Yaroslavl really is just by coming to our space for the city weekend. Besides these events, we have long-term projects. 3 years ago, we united with a large commercial company which exists in the same neighborhood. This is the Yaroslavl Paints factory, and our project is called The Person Makes the Place Bright. We don't use their corporate brands, not the corporate names, nothing like this, only this sign, because this is not advertising, this is not for business. This is a project for the neighborhood. People vote, people pick a courtyard between residence houses where workshops take place each year, and together with the locals we change their environment, and they understand that these changes of the public space happen not only inside our space, they happen in their own courtyard. The TEXTIL project is filling neighborhoods with its projects. We help artists tell the stories of the neighborhood. And when we told the artists that we want to get rooted in the neighborhood, for us it was important not just to create new mythology, new institutions for the neighborhood. We wanted to dig up the treasures of history for this place. We create new sightseeing places, new points of interest, and the narrative of tours that we have in these points of interest is compounded from the history of the factory territory and from new myths created by the artists. The history of our company has been erased and started anew for many times just because of historical tragedies. The names of local entrepreneurs, the founders of these places, have been erased. No one knows about them in libraries, in community centers, nowhere. And it was the street art that sometimes allowed us to bring back to memory the names of these people that are not there in the street names or anywhere. We reclaim them for the neighborhood. And the first achievement of these years was that an interest in the local territories emerged. Locals became interested in the story of their places. We were both very local and very global because the interest to our project was shown from all sides. We found a very interesting partner in Sweden. This is TIC Kulturkapital organization which helped us arrange the People Making Spaces conference 2 years ago. Last August we had a seminar with Project for Public Spaces from the New York region, where we connected various teams from various cities in Russia, where we discussed public spaces for them to be accepted by people, for people to feel that this is their city. Last year we completed the project with collaboration with Vologda and Kostroma, other cities in Russia. We wanted to see around ourselves, to see the neighboring cities, and create such sessions in each of these cities to magnify our collaboration, to strengthen our teams. In the announcement of our talk, gentrification was mentioned, and I thought about this on the way here. Gentrification is not familiar to Yaroslavl. Do people begin renting flats near to your place for more money? No. What has changed is that younger people say that don't live in Krasny Perekop, they live close to TEXTIL. Of course, developers are working blindly. They tuck in their new houses into the neighborhood without considering the local context. The administration doesn't pay attention to the context. They notice us, but nothing more. TEXTIL has been there for 4 years, and our team is 11 years old, and we have already passed a lot of tests together. Our ambition was not to gentrify the neighborhood, to bring in different people instead of those drunkards and so on. No, we wanted those people to stay. But rather we wanted people to feel that TEXTIL is part of their environment. The culture center is something as common as the post office, as the school, as the grocery shop, that this is part of their life. And when I saw the relation that our project wants to build, we want them to have the same relationship with the story of the family, the story of their house, and so on. To spread this attitude to other people. It's not an individual who challenges the city after all, in our case. It's the space that gets changed and challenged when different people feel it. And that's what's valuable for us. Thank you, Yulia Krivtsova. Maybe you have any questions. Yulia will be happy to answer. Maybe if you don't have questions straight away, you may ask them later. That's not an issue. And I want all the speakers to also ask questions, because that's why we're here. So, if you have questions to Yulia Krivtsova, please raise your hand. So, this factory, is it still operating? Yes, it's operating. How do you manage to put this together, the culture center and the factory? How do they interact? That's a good question, because to begin with, the administration of the factory saw this as a kind of a game existing parallel to them. But we picked the warehouse consciously because it's not as tightly built into the whole compound. Cotton is flammable, that's why the cotton warehouse was built not close by the other buildings. But last year was the year when our commercial partners left. They were paying our rent, and they told us, you will be no more. And the factory director said, no, you will exist, because in the 19th century the factory owners saw this as important, to create this socio-cultural infrastructure around the factory. They were not just industrialists, they were socio-cultural builders, socio-cultural planners. I read the diary of the last owner from the 19th century, and I'm amazed how they were creating the socio-cultural mechanisms around their factory. And in the Soviet period, the factory also had the social-cultural function. It was tightly connected to the neighborhood, it cared about it. And in the 90s, it all stopped. The factory was separated from the neighborhood, and people got bitter about it. They were traumatized, they got fired, they lost their savings and so on. They lost a lot. And now, thanks to TEXTIL, they begin connecting to the factory once again. They told it the breadwinner for the people. So it's not new. We continue the historic tradition, which unfortunately got broken. My question is that do you hold contacts, do you hear from other projects of that kind in Russia? And have you got any examples that inspire you, where this gentrification, not like Williamsburg, not like Neukölln, but in the sense of improving and challenging the reality of the locality? Have you got any examples of this kind of gentrification? No, I don't think so. In Russia, everything is so different. I'm interested in viable projects, in projects that do not just fulfill a momentary surge of ambition. I like projects that are about people with an idea, a notion, which have wish to go step by step. But yes, we hear from a lot of cities, and for each city weekend we're visited by delegations from other cities. Something that you know personally, Vologda, Samara, they are different from us, and I value their diversity. We made a project with Vologda and Kostroma. They are different from us. We don't have things that are common in these cities, and we had these exchange sessions to strengthen our team, and we showed them that we don't have to have another thing like this in Yaroslavl. It's better to bring those people to Kostroma. It's important not to copy, not to blindly follow another people's route. It's important to bring in something new for a new city, to make it happen. Okay, we're moving on, and our next speaker is a person whom I have introduced. He could have probably featured in every topic of our discussion, because your activities are so diverse that I don't know where to fit you. Because every time you call me and invite me or other people as speakers, I don't know what it's really that you are doing, so many aspects you've got. So you may talk a little bit about the gentrification, about the changing face of the city. And thank you for coming here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You may go up to this pulpit if you wish.
Вполне комфортно здесь, абсолютно нормально. Мне кажется, я могу провалиться в канализацию сейчас.
I'm afraid I can trip up here and fall into the water here, whether it's a performance or not, I don't know. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Fyodor, for inviting me here. You know, I don't like talking about myself that much, about my own projects, about what my team does, and we do a lot of things, really, yes, and it's not that convenient to fit it into 15 minutes. Many here are familiar with it, but anyway, I'm not going to tell anything about the Olympic ceremonies or any other ceremonies. Don't wait for this. I'm not going to leak anything, because, you know, it's obvious that the Olympic ceremonies in the 2014, the Olympics and the Paralympics, they have not influenced the urban planning in Sochi, or they have not harmonized the city space in any way. It was what the Games did and what their format affected, and that's the same as the FIFA World Cup itself is going to affect the development and harmonization of city space, not the ceremonies. We rather affected the DNA of the Krasnodar Krai and the new territory, because we were 12,000 people working in Sochi, and a lot of Olympic families maybe changed the region in question. They just brought in new blood physically into the region, and it was our contribution to the public space. It's not about urban planning. So, now I'm going to highlight a new project. We are not standing frozen in space, we're moving on, and this is a project that has to do with gentrification. It has something to do with it. It's the remodeling of old space, it's the transformation of old space into newer one, acquiring new meanings for the space. And inadvertently I am spilling over to the third topic today about festivals. But I think all colleagues here are into very interesting things. So, excuse me for running ahead of you. I'm going to talk about city festivals that change the environment. So 3 years ago, together with Rostec State Incorporated company, we created the International Fireworks Festival. It's called like that, the Rostec International Firework Festival. And we believe that this would be a brilliant innovation for the city space. First it happened on Sparrow Hills in Moscow. Of course, it's the university, everybody likes it. Good perspectives from all points. The stadium, the new embankment, the vistas. It was free entry for the first time. And for the 2 afternoons, all in all, from all metro stations, there were, like for the one evening, there were more than 400,000 individuals that wanted to see this pyrotechnic display of the best masters of this art form. And we understood that it's impossible to hold there. It's senseless from the point of view of safety. We shouldn't do it like that. We had quite good understanding with the Moscow law enforcement agencies and with the city administration, but we understood that from the safety point of view and from the point of view of people losing sight of the pyrotechnics, they couldn't see it behind the trees. Everybody was complaining, and everybody came in time. They had children with them, a lot of children, like a third of the whole number, and so it was not the best experience. And we changed the location and found a different space for it. We went across Moscow here and there and understood that the Moskva River is at its broadest between Bratyevo and Marino districts. And we understood that these 2 large neighborhoods have more than 1 million residents. And then we understood that the Moscow administration wanted to develop sub-centers in these districts. So things that are present in Moscow city center, all entertainments, all restaurants, cafes, music, entertainment, and so on, could be extrapolated, could be brought into the suburban neighborhoods, which are basically not that far away. And so we picked Bratyevo Cascade Park. This is the most densely populated neighborhood of Moscow, and we picked the park because it has a unique landscape architecture. It has a cascade of vistas from top to bottom. This is like an open theater, and from all perspectives you can see the pyrotechnics. That's how it looked before we began the reconstruction. That's its history. It began as a dumpster. Then in 2006 the Cascade Park was created with artificial water bodies and a football pitch. People just dumped sand there and a lot of black soil from the districts where new residential construction was taking place. They just poured in earth and soil and sand, and that's how this landscape was created. That's how we understood that we could create the festival there. Last year we managed to convince the Moscow administration that we could pick this location. We asked the local residents of the residents of the city to come not to the Sparrow Hills, to the university, where it's complicated to do it, as I mentioned before. And we understood that this could be a big, serious project. And so as a result, we transformed this into a 2-day event, and maybe it will grow to 3 days later. Every year it gathers, only according to official ticket sales numbers, more than 200,000 people, and on the neighboring territories there were 600,000 people. So all in all, 800,000 individuals who are able to see the fireworks in a peaceful manner, don't obstruct the view for the others. Of course, there is a problem with closures of streets, with organizing traffic, but the location is perfect for our purposes, and everything that has to do with public transportation, with automobile traffic for the people in the neighborhood and for the visitors from other parts of Moscow. We went further. We understood that it's not just about pyrotechnics, and we need to just let people grow their love for that place, and we made a multifaceted program for the festival and had a lot of things happening, starting with 12 starting with noon. There were workshops, workouts, sports, children's hobbies, educational events. We built several art objects in this place. Could we turn on the video here? No, unfortunately. Okay. Oh yes, it does. While it's running, I'm going to continue talking. Last year, when we were explaining this to the Moscow administration, we found a lot of opportunities to create, to transform this nondescript park into something beautiful, new, and well organized, and last year it was the biggest park reconstruction in Moscow. More than 2,000 workers were engaged, a lot of special equipment, and it took us 40 days to make it beautiful. And the main effect from this is the fact that people in Bratyevo and Marino have a new public leisure territory because of our festival and our work there. Now a lot of people go there for promenade, to be outside. A lot of children, they're not just drinking beer and barbecuing, they have a lot of cafes. That's how it was, that's what it's now. And so you see the scale of it on the pictures. We changed it all completely. And it was thanks to our initiative and our project that we brought into these two districts in Moscow, Bratyevo and Marino. Now it's a civilized city space for leisure. A lot of people come there from the neighborhood, not just Bratyevo and Marino, Zyablikova and other districts further on are included in the process. They have been changing the metro stations as well. Architectural installations are set up. The life of the park is completely different now. It is organized anew. It's a new public space in a distant neighborhood of Moscow, next to the Kashirskaya highway, not in the city center. And now this other video. Oh, sorry? I've done something wrong. Could you help me? As a final note, 42 seconds, just like this. I'm going to have this video. Sorry? Oh, yes. So that's how it looks now. That's when the people come. 200,000 people come to see us. Currently, it's the biggest festival of any kind in Moscow, as for the number of visitors. That's last year. And this year, it was a record. Thank you. Thank you, Andrei Nasanovsky. Maybe you have questions? Don't be shy. We'll bring you a mic if you wish to ask a question. No questions? Okay, you stunned us all. Totally. No questions when we are so stunned. So, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them later. And now the next subject. That's going to be a talk about the city square, city fair, and city mall, and the way how public art can solve the issue of this big thing. Yesterday, after Jorn's lecture, a lady from Samara came to us almost crying and told us that we cannot imagine what's this Koshelev something, a district in her city where millions of people live, and that's the only place in Samara where you can buy affordable housing, and the only cultural thing there is just a shopping mall, IKEA, and that's where they go for some culture, to improve, to be educated, and for leisure. And that's what we want to highlight today, the way how this square next to IKEA or shopping mall or anything like that, a space which is considered to be more comfortable and convenient than the poor housing, how this place can be changed through public art. And the first speaker to this topic is Ilya Balakirev, the design director of the Sila Sveta company. Does it work? Hi all. Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about, and my aspect is rather technology, and I'm going to describe some technology that we have already used in our practice. And these technologies are about how you can create some wow factor by incurring small changes. I'm going to begin with classic mapping, but I must tell you that with any technology we want to add something unique and interesting to it. The first project, the show at VDNH, at the Krivtsova festival, this is the regular mapping. You see the building, everything moving around, and we had two interesting points here. We had an artist, a performer, Yuri Kolokolnikov, and secondly we had music accompaniment, Vtol helped us with sound. And the main point here was not just using poetry and our long considerations, because they were basis for both graphics and video, and we used the performer in our graphics and video. So in the square in front of the building, they had PA systems, and we brought up our sound into this PA system around the square, and so this was a surround sound. And for example, we used the words, single words of the poems by Mayakovsky, migrating from one loudspeaker to the other, but at the show itself, it all fell apart, and we had the sound coming only from one direction, not surround sound. But even these simple things with sound could really radically change the space. Next thing, the wound that has been shown before, connection of kinetics and line, the outline event that did not take place. I'm going to tell you about only the tech, not reflecting upon it. So our guys here and the Stereotactica present here took part in this project. It was this great giant doll, a marionette, and we had a lot of issues with creating this. It's 8 meters tall, and no one does custom kinetics in Moscow. So we had model tests on smaller models. We were looking at its various poses and so on. But then we created other layers for our content. We didn't want to sell it in the very beginning of the fest, I mean to leak it to the public, and so we had it covered before the beginning, or at the beginning of the festival. It was covered by a mesh, and everything was projected onto the mesh. Next it would be removed, and the silhouette would be shown in light, and then we would begin with the projecting things onto the marionette. We had a lot of projects running for this, a lot of blueprints, and we invented different things for them not just be beautiful, but the marionette was movable, and so at a certain point it was coming to life. And that's how we created those unique loops when it is running inside the video picture, or separating the waters as Moses did. So a lot of interesting points, and it had a LED face which we could turn into various masks and expressions. It added an additional layer of the difference between the plastic movements, the video and its face. I was present at the general rehearsal. I saw it, and then I went home to sleep before the festival, and then I opened my news feed in my phone and understood that no one would be able to see this, that it's all cancelled. I'm really sorry about this, but we got a lot of experience on large installations. So you never showed it anywhere. It was featured in the Tsvetnoy shopping mall. So a small excursion here, a small event, but I think this experience will become the norm. We tried to combine VR and an event, not just people coming to listen to music, but there is also a VR zone for people to view some surrealistic vistas in their VR helmets. It was an abandoned shopping mall, this nice, sterile, white environment, patterned environment, and we introduced a sci-fi subject for them, a kind of a martial arts ring for people to come in, but it was a logistical problem because it's hard to put on the VR helmet, it's hard to explain it for people, and so we understood that it should be simple. The VR level was at the same level as the dancing floor. So, for example, they come to the left zone, they put on the helmet, and they move on through the purple zone, entering different environments in their VR experience. Just the VR is simple, but we added a tracking layer. When the person is present in the space, the content reacts to their movement. And these are these 5D effects, cheap ones really. To the left you see what the spectator sees, like they're underwater, an enormous medusa hanging above them, a jellyfish hanging above them, and it was just, rags, fabrics hanging above. And to the right you see a kind of a bridge, a light gate, but in fact it was just a board across the floor, and the person can walk across it, and from the left a warm gust of wind is blowing, so the person feels outside. It was nice to imagine, but we had so little time to work it before the party, but we got interesting experience. Mixed style. You can just take a big hangar space, and this event that we made, it was just a big hangar, nothing inside, people taking seats, and then boom, and the floor goes alive. It turns into a ferromagnetic liquid, just like common tarmac, creates this illusion of liquid water, something. These are the individual frames from this presentation, and it was a presentation for Audi A5 car model. This we have floor mapping. A lot of people have used this. It's nothing new, but we created a new layer with physical light. And one more topic here is tracking. I don't know whether this is familiar to you, but we used sensors across the whole room, and there are people carrying proximity sensors on themselves, and they interact with the content. And I was stunned when I saw it for the first time. There was a guy with a mop walking across the hangar. He has these motion sensors across the on the mop, and he rotates them, and it's like Arthur Clarke said, this technology looks like magic. And I asked him, dude, what are you doing? And he says, I'm drawing a field. And yes, he was drawing a field or painting a field maybe, but it was unseen, invisible. It was the field that is the tracking field. When an object with motion trackers enters this field, he or she feels what's happening, feels the changes. So besides tracking and mapping, we had one additional interesting thing invented by the department. After the show, when the announcer told us, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, everybody got a call on their phone, and the last word was told them through their own phones, you can. And it was just a bomb. It was something stunning. Now I think all these solutions should really incorporate something already existing and a new objective. That's what I want to say. Thank you all. Yes, that's the case when a creative power speaks for itself. Nothing else is needed. So maybe anybody has a question. You are such shy and quiet audience. No one wants to object. Everybody believes what they are saying. You are the best. Okay, no questions, that's for the better we finish this marathon, as Hans-Ulrich Obrist does. But now there is a short stop here, because the next speaker is a very special speaker. He has brought up several generations of young Norwegian artists. That's what the demiurged taught them to do. Andrei, for how long you have been a teacher at the Norwegian Academy? 9 years. Now he's going to teach us a little bit, but we are very focused. We are talking about what happens when, for example, at a shopping mall in Krivtsova, Barteniev happens, and the shopping mall ceases to exist while Barteniev's work is present there, and everybody gets sorry when the works are removed, because they had wanted this to stay forever. Hi everyone, I'm very grateful to the organizers for inviting me to talk here, because I met old friends here, my close friends, and I'm seeing a new audience here. September the 20th, I open an exhibition which is called Haha Moscow. I invite you all to visit this exhibition. It is dedicated to the champions of Romanticism that live in this problematic space of Moscow. It's in the Art Forum Museum, spearheaded by Sergei Markin. I'm going to show you my new little birds, the new generation, and you are going to love them. So please turn on the presentation. I don't know how it's done technically. Let the slides flick, but I'm going to tell you about my experience of working with different clients. You know that I'm an artist, and I came to art with a very particular and then unneeded practice, performance art. People never understood this and called me a couturier, a designer, cloth designer, and I was just an artist, and I began working with synthetic art from the early 90s. I engaged in multimedia genres from there. Journalists criticized me all the time. They couldn't understand what I'm about, and then in the late 90s it became a huge trend, and in the noughts it was a huge know-how when a contemporary artist had to become synthetic. You are too young to remember this age when you are criticized for doing a lot of things at the same time. Now everybody can do anything, and you use this opportunity for yourself. This is my performance, the Botanic Ballet, dedicated to my childhood in the town of Norilsk in the north, in the far north. And Yulia Bychkova was the producer. She's the spearhead of the project Arkhstoyanie in the township of Nikola Lenivets, and that's how we came to the shopping mall in Krivtsova in Moscow. They are complicated people, but they are as complicated as American or European clients. Russian commercial clients differ from Europe and America in only one aspect. In the States, they are more educated, and if they are more educated, then their trust for the people they meet and for the initiatives of the artists, they trust them more. And so you get into this Krivtsova Plaza shopping mall. This is the average Russian case, but Yulia Bychkova is there with you. And everybody respects her. Respects her Arkhstoyanie festival. No one can challenge her authority. And now she happens to be in this shopping mall, and there are 7 young girls present. They are the marketing managers of this big, rich shopping mall, which has just been opened, and the owner is present. He's either Turkish or something like that. He's an Oriental person. So I open my bag and throw on the table stuffed toys, elephant, a cat, a bear, everything so fluffy and nice. And the girls are saying this and want to handle these stuffed animals. And so I'm telling the guys and girls there, that's the test. The audience likes soft, squishy, nice, fluffy things. Here you see my preparation for the Brinkman on the slide. Back to our case. I told them, let's build symbols of love in your shopping mall. Why do you need them there? You need them there because the first people to react are children. Children are going to rush there. Parents are going to follow them, and if the children react positively, this is for the Burning Man. So, if the children provoke positive emotions in children, then the parents would really totally have to be positive about it. That's our big main sculpture for Burning Man. It was stabbed 30 times at the end. It was glowing, but it was so beautiful that it was stabbed. I was filling the holes. You know, I'm standing in the desert, it's 1 a.m., it's cold. I was cycling before that, I was cycling far away. I'm skipping from one to the other because this is so fresh in the memory. It's a fresh wound, it has not healed. A step wound, as you see. And so I'm cycling around and I'm thinking about this 7-meter tall glowing sculpture that was stabbed mercilessly. Burning Man is something impossible, and you know, this thing is glowing there as a phantom of a moth. It's glowing faintly. It is not very well discernible on the playa at the Burning Man. You see where the lighting is worse, then there is my meditating alien sitting. So I'm cycling around, and then I think, oh hell, what should I do with those holes? The air is pumped in, but the holes affect the position of the head. It's going down and down. And I remember I have this band-aid from the Soviet times in my bag. It's a remainder from the 90s. And I know this devil is able to fill any hole, to glue any wound. And so I come back, I open my suitcase. I scream to my friend Pasha. Я знаю, как я могу починить нашего инопланетянина. And so Pasha is saying, okay, let's do it. So I pick the band-aid, I come to the sculpture, I'm angry as a hellhound, and a young black man, black-haired, comes up to me. He's followed by a beautiful slim blonde, and he asks me, may I touch this? And I tell him, don't touch this, ever. He's asking me what I'm doing, and I say, I'm restoring this. This sculpture got stabbed 30 times. He tells me, I'm the one who made the glowing tree. I say, that's the best for me, that's my favorite object here. And he says, and this is my favorite object, your alien. And I tell them, okay, you may touch it. And so I'm repairing it one by one, and the head is raised up again. Coming back to the shopping mall in Moscow. Well, a sculpture in public space, you should understand that we have several particular objectives when we shape this city environment by spreading objects across it. Moscow is not the best example because we've got only one strategy. Moscow must be turned into a public memorial complex. When I look at Moscow, I understand that everybody who creates all these monuments, all these memorials, that they were working at a graveyard and they were making tombstones, expensive marble, golden letters, ceramics, everything as it should be, planting trees so that people can walk up to the body of the deceased and to lay flowers there. This aesthetic, this culture of a graveyard is the paradigm for Moscow. And of course Moscow is not the best example, therefore. It's hard to understand what I mean thinking of Moscow, but I think that city sculpture has three objectives. It has to be educating, instructive, it has to be entertaining, and everybody understands this, but it has another third secret objective. It has to attract attention, to emphasize something. I'll explain it. When you live in a city like New York, Moscow or London, SF less so, but NY, London, Tokyo, Moscow, not Berlin, then you live in a situation of constant stress. And when you go along a street, you have point A and point B. You commute from home to work, from work to home, and you don't need anything else at all. And imagine this, you're walking, And then you stumble upon a sculpture of a flower, and something is sprinkling out of it, water is sprinkling out of its center. And this encounter is a turning point, because your attention widens, expands. You step aside from your personal trajectory and you expand your space. You expand the scale of your attention, the scope of your attention, because you begin looking around. The sculpture has affected you, has gave you some momentum, it has inspired you or surprised you. It depends on its character, but it has given you a momentum which leads you to looking around, and you begin considering what me, a simple, weak person in this big city, what am I doing in this landscape? And smart city planners, when they consider placing sculptures, they consider it together with infrastructure, residential houses, shops, whatever, because this chance encounter of the sculpture and the person should be used, and this is used very well in Paris. I really like the way they shape the environment in Paris and in New York. Here you see what we put in the shopping mall in Moscow. This emphasis on attracting attention is important for city sculpture. And so when all these beautiful things were opened, this nice cat, we had security staff all over the place. They were not letting people touch it. The press came, celebrities came, and I said, let the people touch it. When we removed all the red tape, children rushed to it. They climbed upon the cat with their dirty soles, shoes, and I thought, let them do what they want with these cats and bears. Let them crawl up, climb up the bear, and so on. We had a lot of sculptures there. An elephant as well, yeah, here you see it. Children were all over the place. The interviews were over, the celebrities left, and I was very tired after 3 days with no sleep, and I come up to this cat to take a last look at it before leaving, and I see this cat is dirty from top to bottom. Children were all over the cat, and I look at this cat's face, and I see it's happy. And I was so surprised by it. And I saw, you son of a bitch, you are so dirty from the very first day, and you're happy. You're smiling at me. And that's when I realized that's the magic of art, be it contemporary, prehistoric, classical. When I look at its face, I realized that it incorporates all these dirty footprints, and these are medals of honor for it. And I thought, how happy am I to be an artist in this world, because I'm able to feel this connection when real life meets my art, when it brings about this sentimental, lyrical fruits. When something kind, nice, warm and tender is created, and it gives you power to create further, to live on. That's what city sculpture should do right. It has to give us energy, give us hope and the desire to live on, to face the future with curiosity. That's all from me. Thank you. That's my favorite berry structure. It is built out of ceramics made by Dimov Manufacturing, and it's snowberry.
It's quite huge. It's one of my favorites. It's with Hopper and Schnabel together in one collection in Moscow City.
Представлено в одной коллекции в Москва-Сити.
Just always line together. You know them. Of course.
Ну, может, у вас есть какие-нибудь... Я даже не спрашиваю.
I'm not asking you about questions. You should have no questions by now.
Наоборот, они не устали, они готовы.
They're not tired, no. They are getting prepared for more questions later.
Да, правда, нету?
Am I right? Yeah, no questions now?
Вау.
On the 20th, the big love is coming here in the gallery, which is called Здесь. The exhibition is called Haha Moscow. Thank you. And now Andrei is going to hand out flyers. Now it's over for the public art topic. I think this was exhaustive. It covered everything, and I think that it's good that now we have those practitioners, not just theorists, and they showed us what's right and what's wrong in this field. And we are moving on to the last section of our talk, and there we have a lot of different festivals. We will begin with a local example, which is able to compete with international examples, I think. These are our friends, fabulous friends from Stereotactica, Alexei Demarsky, the co-director and creative head of the company. I have also this murky TV past, and he has also done things on TV. So he speaks very well. Sila Sveta, I think, will be the aim of a lot of questions, because everybody has visited those raves, those parties, Miller and so on. We'll know about the outline, and we'll know that if those people were allowed to do it, they would become the head attraction. But unfortunately, the Moscow administration, although we have some good relationships with it, is not so good about young people wanting to be happy, and so about happiness, about the facts, about the ways in which a festival lets people think, makes people think that Kronstadt is the best place for partying in Russia, or that you should come for a whole day and night to a factory in Mytishi near Moscow. These ideas come first to Lyosha. These are the ideas of our whole team. Thank you. I am the creative director of the Stereotactic and the founder of the whole movement. For those who don't know about me, I'll highlight briefly what we do. We're an advertising agency. We make a lot of things, a lot of creative projects in advertising and communication. Maybe the most interesting things are events that we do. We do big events for big brands in sports, in alcohol, and I'm not going to boast too much, but I believe that these are important things, although they are just advertising. We also produce videos. We make advertising and documentaries and feature films, but we have also initialized the Outline Festival together with the Sila Sveta colleagues, and we have worked on this until today. We're partners of the Beat Festival.
Культуре. Это изначально был фестиваль документальных фильмов о музыке, теперь это фестиваль документальных фильмов в принципе о современной культуре в рамках этого.
So we have a documentary festival, a feature film festival, a platform for young.
Вот, я сейчас для переводчика не очень, конечно.
Yes, I should speak slower. Thank you for reminding me.
А главное, что это позволит мне растянуть мой рассказ.
And this allows me to speak for the whole 10 minutes that I have here. Maybe sometimes it will look less well prepared because I am not very well prepared, but I'm going to tell you about two pop-up projects that happened, unconsciously in our life, so as well as this presentation. So this pop-up approach can be extrapolated upon many things. So this first project is called M. And this is a finite thing. It existed only for one season, for one summer, and I think it felt like a festival. What you are going to see is just a slideshow where I added some words where something can be discussed. 10 minutes is not very simple because you cannot tell about anything, and to highlight it briefly you need just a couple of words. So let's see. That's the first series of slides. Yes, it's still too fast. Should I stop and pause? No, you shouldn't.
За временем не успеть. Собственно, успеть за временем, да, во многом, кстати, одним из ключевых тезисов того, о чем я сегодня
keeping up with time,
буду
that's
говорить.
an important thing, not just for my presentation, but for the content. Now you see the photos of this M project. Maybe some of you have visited it. What is this about? This is a project initiated by the developers, the Art Kvartal company, who have several development projects in Moscow, and you have to give them their due. These are one of the very few companies who, in this boring field, created something artistic and creative. And they understood that these temporarily abandoned spaces, for which they have plans for the future, can be used to create something. That's how the project Emma was created, at the premises of the former Emma factory, which produced medical devices. And so it looked like that when we began. Sorry. When we got acquainted with the project, that's how it looked. Katya Kibovskaya was present there, who was working closely with Art Kvartal, the developer, and she understood that something visible should be made, something that put it on the map. We invited very interesting people from the architectural bureau Cosmos, and they created this big installation outside of this place. I think this image of moon and stars is familiar to you. It's 2015, I think that's familiar to you. This was the main star of Instagram in Moscow. So its audience are people who are hard to characterize sociologically or demographically. When we consider our audience, we consider them as young people, and we don't think about exact age. These are people who are young in their mind, in their perception of life, open to new influences of different walks in life. But when they get into these circumstances, they open up anew. So what did we do? Nothing special. We brought in a lot of old junk that we had due to our profession in events, and we deconstructed this classical Soviet interior. So we didn't modify the city, although city modification is usually, city modification is usually connected with destroying things, creating things anew, destroying them anew, and so on. We worked in a different manner. We take old things, and through this deconstruction we turn them into new things by also highlighting the stronger points of it, the strength of the old. And I think this image very well characterizes our approach. We see everything present there, three layers of Soviet paint, three patterns of tiles on the floor. Everything was created by different people in their own time. So what did we do on top of it? We added an eclectic set of things. Paintings by Pavlik Kuznetsov, created out of found objects, a very expensive set of furniture, old Soviet things which we found on flea markets. So we created an atmosphere, a reality, which could not have been created in normal state of things. And the way we compiled them, the way we combined them, that was how the new reality was formed, unlike anything else. And you see, it comes down to small details. You have a lot of objects which provoke associations and connotations in individuals, and this associative series and this sensation of irreality, that's what we wanted to create. And that's what reality is about. Because if you consider our reality, it is made up of news feeds. This is a contamination of different things. And so in Emma we have the same ideas in design, the collage, the things glued together, that are present in the digital, this patchwork, now it turns into real design, into real life, into real objects. And every object has its own story. For us, this patchwork of stories creates a new level of involvement. And the activities that were happening there, I believe that involve people more than just simply doing things.
Если говорить о контенте, который про
If you think about our content, and you see this was quite popular, the content was diverse. Our audience that we met at our events was very diverse. We had punks coming for the left-wing culture festival, together with the audience of bookshops like Falanster or Tsiolkovsky. And on the other hand, we had celebrities of the beau monde. And so, yes, once again, this patchwork was realized in the general aesthetics, in the content, and in the experience of our audience, people mixing up. We believe that in Moscow context and Russian context, it was something interesting. I have a lot of photos from this and from the thing that we did at Krugozor. What we did at Krugozor follows the logic of Emma project. We took an old space which used to belong to the developer. I'm going to show you the Krugozor. And here's what it looked before. Where is it? It's the Pravda Street. In Moscow, it's the same developer company. They're going to build a residence complex there. And everything that we did will help them in communicating their plan, because the audience that they want to attract for their projects are people that are rather young, free-thinking, and the projects that we create in their premises are going to become an important argument in attracting this audience as buyers for their property. So I have quite little time left. Let me summarize it and bring some meaning into what I've said. I've thought along about how you can connect this to the idea of individuals challenging cities. I don't want to be too high-minded, but I must say that our projects are inclusive and they're self-contained. They don't change the city outside. They're not ambient. They're not performative. You have to find it. You have to know about it. This is a piece of subculture. But you must understand that people attracted to these places are those who are going to shape the city. And we are working with these young visionaries. They visit us. They are inspired by those places. And these spaces are a gulp of fresh air for them. They are places of freedom. And maybe in this regard we can say that we shape the consciousness of people who are going to change the city. And that's why we shape the city. I want to believe that we're going to continue with this. Thank you. Thank you, Lyosha. I have a question myself. Oh. Okay, you're going to wait for me to ask mine, and then you have the floor. So, I have this intermediate conclusion. Event makers, both of you are event makers, Andrei and Alexei. They're very often called upon to visit a certain platform where they're expected to change the fate of the place. And you know, a long time ago I visited a rave that you made for Miller. I'm not a fan of raves. Miller is not either, but he liked it so much. But I must say that I had this impression that you visited it and you left it. Did you come back there? Well, almost. recently when one very famous Russian magazine was celebrating its birthday. No, we didn't come back there really. And this sprint nature of this paradigm shifts, this change of optics all the time is characteristic of us, and it's characteristic of the time. And as we do a lot of with the nightlife in Moscow, and so we're often asked whether we don't want to create a place for ourselves. We don't want to do it. We create pop-up places, but we think about whether those permanent places are important. So I want to say that, we acquire experience unconsciously. With your experience, with your back catalog, you are apparently ready to program not just a space, but neighborhood, not just a neighborhood, but a part of a city. You're right, and this was one of my points that I wanted to bring up, but I forgot about it. But yes, the topic is strategically important, how an individual changes a whole city. We work tactically, we work locally, but still the principles that come out of our local events can be extrapolated to strategic initiatives. And this organic approach that we use with our environments, how organically we want to create in it without breaking anything, I think that's an approach that can be scoped to a larger environment. From the CSA experience and from what Andrei has shown us in Brateevo, you are there still, yes, Andrei? You are asked whether you are going to do something else, your experience is needed there. Maybe you don't like working the administration so much, but still, do you think that it may turn out to that you are going to get rooted somewhere? Yes, I have this feeling, and it's surprising. We were born as a team working on a project that never was realized. It was a project in Sochi, a city for the youngsters, but due to several reasons, and we don't work with state structures, and a lot of such long-standing, expensive projects involves the state structures, the government structures in a way, and we have different insights, different approaches, different understanding of the reality. But I want to believe that... I don't know, I don't have a specific answer, but yes, I think you were quite clear.
Thank
you for your quick talk. This was very interesting. My name is Alexander. My question is the following. On the one hand, maybe some people may think it's banal, but for me it's a living question. In the project that you have described, you have this eclecticism, the patchwork aspect, and Andrei has also mentioned the synthetic nature of all that we do, and other famous people do here. But I'm very much interested in how these tendencies arise. Why is this a trend of combining various things together? Things happening anew in this new context. And if we think about this is the image of today, but can we put it in a visionary way? What are going to be the trends of tomorrow without any warranties, especially for the future? I have some considerations about this. Where does it come from? Where do the trends come from? I think it's rather obvious. It has been described a lot of times. I don't want to be banal myself. I think it's about the informational tools, information environment that overcomes any geographical barriers, and there is no information that is not accessible. It depends only on your desire to find it. And as we have a certain strength of desire, we find this information and we compile it in the way that our mind and our unconscious interprets this. We compile it, yes, it's rather subjective, but our subjectivity happens to be relevant. for other people. People find themselves in it. When it comes to the future, then I think the development of the digital technologies will lead to the fact that groups of people will interact in a more segmented manner, in more and more narrow groups, centered around certain interests. And you see that big groupings in music disappear, big clubs in music disappear. Everything becomes episodic, single moment thing. For example, yesterday I read about the music video by the rapper Face, which was very successful in its start. I have never heard about this rapper, but it's a good illustration, and people devoted to the interests, narrow interests, and the surges of interest in certain groups. I hope that these surges will be relevant for us as well. And so we're going to continue by moving from Russia to foreign nations. And I must say that we often underestimate the importance of a certain medium. For example, we believe that, well, dance cannot be very important. What is dance? Unfortunately, Russian is lagging behind it in this. Our classical ballet is world famous, but after that, in contemporary dance, everything is not that good. You know, there are 100 famous Chinese artists in the world, 50 Brazilian artists, and 2 Russians, because the state is not interested in it, the government is not interested. But on the other hand, there is the contemporary dance story. Just like visual art, just like Russian design, it's not interesting for anybody in the world, because there is no school of this. Everybody is taught classically. Everybody, and there is only one academy producing new material. And so it's interesting to look at how it connects to the city. Dancing people, as you see in Moscow parks, especially in Gorky Park, where people gather to dance what they like, or have the movements, bodily movements that they like. And that's the interesting thing, and it's a centrifugal thing, because these physical movements involve more and more people. They invite their families and children, and here we have the example of Vienna, which becomes the world capital of contemporary dance for the summer. Tens of thousands of people come to Vienna not just to dance together, but just to bring this dance to their home and repeat it there. And this affects tourism, because the city administration obviously take part in arranging this festival, or at least permits it to happen, and that's what we would like the artistic director of this famous Impulse Dance Festival to highlight. Rio Rutzanger, the floor is yours.
I feel I'm the only one without a TV host background. My background is bike messaging, so I hope it won't display as much. Thanks for the introduction. It's also a little bit humbling to hear all your incredible experiences and projects that you brought into life. But coming from a dance form that also in Vienna has the reality of an audience of, like, if you have 100 in the theater, it's already amazing. So to suddenly have events with 800,000, it's totally out of dimension for contemporary dance, and especially to do something sustainable in contemporary dance. Obviously, dance is an ephemeral art form, so it's about the beauty of the thing that is happening in the moment and then not there anymore. And I think that's also maybe the reason why now in the 21st century so many dance places take place in what in German we call Zwischennutzung, which is interim use, which I saw also a lot in other initiatives that you have, where you use abandoned factories, where you use places that so far haven't been used so much or frequented so much by the population of the city or by the other cultural players, and turn it into your stage for a certain while. We have in our festival, so there's Impulse Dance. It happens in the summer in Vienna, in Austria, which was until the 90s probably a very dull place with a lot of old stones where most people came only reluctantly with their parents who wanted to see some buildings that survived World War II. And then the music scene, actually, the electronic music scene, Kruder Dorfmeister, Pulsinger Tunakan, they, without any funding, made Vienna an interesting place suddenly. Made clubs open, created an audience that as physically as people was there, but wasn't there because of some vision, but simply of technology, I guess, being available suddenly to produce music more easily. And contemporary dance has a little bit of a similar timing as electronic music has in Vienna. It was basically dead after World War II until the 80s, which is when a few companies started to work. I also immediately worked in places that were not theaters because there were no dance theaters, there was only spoken word theaters. So the very start of it was already, okay, what's the space for us? And it could be the city, or it could be parks, or it could be museums. And at the same time, we started our festival in '84 as a workshop festival with 5 teachers and 15 workshops. Meanwhile, it's 190 artists this year that we're teaching, and 270 workshops stretched over 4.5 weeks, and attracting 3,000 students from all over the world, which is, yeah, again, a small number compared to an 800,000 audience, but which is an exciting aspect in the city of Vienna, because many of them stay for not only a day or two, but a few hundred stay for all the 4 or 5 weeks, and yeah, they. When you asking the question, how does this festival affect the city? I've first thought of the bicycles that we have. It's the only thing we own as a non-profit organization. It's 200 bicycles, because we were afraid people don't come to our workshop venue because it was a little bit out of town, not easily reachable with public transport. So some city bike company got bankrupt in 2000, and they had T-Mobile Magenta and Nokia Blue bicycles that they auctioned, and we bought them, and they're incredibly ugly, but they're very functional. And meanwhile we bought, there was 90 then, and then we bought 90 more, and then we bought 60 more, so we have 250 bikes, and they mark probably the city the most. It's not an art form, it's the bicycles. The police loves us because they fine people constantly because they don't speak the language, so they rather pay quickly, and they already know July, August, that's our payday. We the pink and blue bikes. At the same time, yeah, it stands for mobility, and it's the biggest advertisement in a way because everybody knows those ugly bikes. And the second biggest display is probably our parties, and again, I mean, which is also about dance, of course. And for us, though, it was more a strategy to make sure that the artists that we invite come together in a place, like a festival center. So we are, for 33 days of this festival, we have what we call Festival Lounge. And yeah, every day it's free, so, and the prices are moderate, so every night there's basically 800-900 people coming to this contemporary dance event, which of course is a party and not a contemporary dance event. But those are the most notable things that the city is affected by in terms of our initiative. In the dance scene, yeah, we are this summit of where everyone runs together. And I find it interesting, as I started before, that we were more and more using now those spaces, like purposefully choosing and looking for spaces that were that are in the city but are abandoned either through the death of industrialization or simply they're abandoned because a certain era is left by the developers, and yeah, that's becoming the most interesting spaces for making art, for gathering artists, and use them so both for workshops and for staging things. And we have shows, one-on-one shows in hotel rooms, as much as we have things like this. I mean, that's very easy, no, to start with nudity, but this is the museum's quarter, which is a very central space in Vienna. And if we do an opening, which we can't afford every year, then there's usually 3,000-4,000 people gathering there. And yeah, we've done very different things there. We've done an Indian classical music concert that was put up in a sort of a shelf of 4 floors, where musicians were sitting on all floors, which was, well, not architecturally, but structurally quite an interesting challenge. And also for musicians, there were 60 musicians on display, and they normally would improvise together by looking at each other, and because of this thing being flat, they couldn't look at each other. So it was an interesting task, and visually very stunning. And here is an Austrian artist, Doris Uli, who is who started a workshop at our festival called More Than Naked, where she was reflecting on, okay, it's the 21st century, nudity is the cliche of contemporary dance. Why do people always have to get naked in the performances, is what many people ask. And she asked that question in the workshop, that there's no provocation in it anymore. There's what's the point? We can dance dressed as well, or we can also not dance, as in contemporary dance this often happens, dressed as well. And so she started this workshop, and she attracted, I would say, in the first year, 15, 16 people who were also more critical about that, and were not people who said, I want to go on stage, I want to be naked, that's my body, I trained my body, I want to show it, but more, is it really necessary, and if so, why? And this workshop became so popular that in the next few years she always had our maximum of people in participation of 40 people. And she loved the work with them so much, because they were mainly humble people working with the body, that she wanted to make a piece out of it, and so we supported this creation. And in the year after that creation, we invited her to do it in the museum's quarter. So, and that's what I kind of appreciate Vienna for quite a bit, that there is a possibility like the Life Ball. I don't know if you've heard it. It's the biggest AIDS charity event in the world, and the city gives the city hall for it. So this was the first time in the 90s that the LGBT scene, I think worldwide, had such a manifest, such a representational building as their venue to do an event to address issues, and we were supported to do this performance here in public. Oops, and there was afterwards. Doris is the woman in the back, and she was teaching after. She was teaching afterwards, and she was encouraging also to the audience to strip naked, and many of them followed. So that was one of the more contemporary things that we did. We also have this one video, the one that starts at 5 minutes, where a Bollywood performance was taking place. Artistically not very interesting, but it was exciting when 2,000 people suddenly participated in a Bollywood workshop, and Vienna being a place where that is not so emotional in the first place, and so that's where we do reach out to places where we're trying to work on more physicality amongst people in less and less emotional world. That's Bollywood. Yeah. He's the only star that we have, the guy running this. He's one of the jurors of an Indian dance show. He's on big billboards in Mumbai, has to go around in dark limousines, comes to our festival because nobody knows him there, and learns and studies other dance styles. That's okay, thank you. There's one last video of future archaeology, this 1 minute thing with the talking about other, like going to spaces. This is currently incredibly developing. Do you have the sound for it? Because it's kind of funny. This is an area, this is a project we did in 2014 called the Future Archaeology, where in an area outside of, on the fringes of Vienna, which right now becomes very central because they built the main station there. And they did a project on how to collaborate. They are artists from Egypt and from Austria and from Germany. And these are projects that we try to realize more and more, and that's what also dance more as a, thank you, that's it. Dance as an art form, I think, can contribute, like the bodies or how the body reacts to an architecture.
Thank you very much, Rio. I'm not sure if we have any questions, because that's not the case of our audience. They're more like listeners, but that's amazing, isn't it? Well, if I'm wrong, then just you know what to do. Anyway, and we're moving forward, and we had an amazing talk last night here at Strelka, where Jörn Weisbert had the most interested and sort of passionate audience. They also didn't have any questions, but that's how it works here at Strelka. It's my first experience here, and I'm very excited to know that people really don't ask; people just absorb. This is something I'd love to continue having in the rest of my life. I don't want anyone to ask me any questions. Just pretty much want to tell them, and so they trust and they go and do. Yeah? All right, so Jörn Weisbert, who is not only just our dear friend, but and a future director of the world, but the future is tomorrow, but also like a current artistic advisor director of the Music Center LA, and recently, just a year ago, Jörn left after 5 years of serving as a director of Luminato Festival, which is one of the most amazing city festivals on the face of the planet. It's in Toronto in Canada. So Jörn is going to talk for the next 10 minutes about his experiences, about his experience in Toronto, and about how the city reacted to the massage Jörn gave it at a certain point out of his 5 years of directorial career.
Thank you, Fyodor. It's wonderful to be here. Moscow is one of my favorite cities in the world. It is. I was born in Germany, and there's something very mysterious about Moscow for us Germans. So I was the artistic director of the Luminato Festival in Toronto for 5 years. Toronto, if you don't know it, is in Canada. Canada is the second largest country in the world. The largest is? Yay! Okay, we're doing audience participation though. Canada is maybe, I always compared it sort of to the Switzerland of Europe. It's a country with a great inferiority complex. They always say sorry. They have sort of, Toronto seems to sort of have this motto of, if we can make it big, why don't we make it a little smaller? Which is not necessarily something that is my motto. I was sort of more a person, if we can make it big, let's make it bigger. And the festival was founded about 11 years ago, and like most festivals in the world, it was founded after a big crisis. The Edinburgh Festival was founded after the Second World War, the Sydney Festival. Most of these sort of city festivals were founded after the Second World War, after sort of that collapse really of culture. The Luminato Festival, which I guess you can compare two festivals like the Sydney Festival, the Manchester International Festival, sort of these multi-arts, multidisciplinary festivals. We did everything from dance to opera to music to visual arts to circus and magic and food and whatever your mind comes up with. So Luminato was founded after SARS. SARS was a flu that was transferred by birds. I think it was one of these terrible viruses that originated in Hong Kong, and the first patient that contracted SARS flew from Hong Kong to Toronto. So Toronto was the most hit city along with Hong Kong, and when SARS was over, when it was finally, and nobody was allowed to travel to Toronto, people were advised not to come to Toronto anymore. When SARS was over, Hong Kong made like this gigantic marketing campaign throughout the world and had advertisements, in Pravda and Commerçant and the New York Times and, and the Paris newspapers and everything. Toronto had advertisement in the Buffalo News. Buffalo is sort of a small American city across from the Lake Ontario. So, hey, we're back, you can come back. So this festival, Luminato, was founded after SARS, and the idea was to basically switch the light back on, to, through the arts, bring Toronto to the forefront again. And like most festivals, large festivals, the idea was that you would spread art across the city. And that's what we did, that's what I did in the first 4 years as well. So I want to show you some of the projects that we did. The first one here is a piece by a Canadian artist called Michel de Bruyne. It's a mirror ball, a disco ball, that is the largest in the world, at least at the moment when we suspended it, it was the largest in the world. That was suspended over a large city square, and you could sort of see it, the reflections all across the buildings. Marina Abramovic came and did her Marina Abramovic Institute prototype in a public park in Toronto. There she is. We did a 70th birthday concert for Joni Mitchell. I don't know if she's known here, but it was the first concert where she actually performed again after an abstinence from the stage for 12 years. And in Canada, that is basically is sort of equivalent to Jesus, walking back on stage and says, I'm going to teach you the next 10 commandments, or something like that. Victor and Rolf presented their dolls at the Royal Ontario Museum. Adam Agoyan presented an opera. Then, because I come from Berlin, I'm very interested in industrial spaces, and I've been looking in Toronto for a very, very long time, and I found this decommissioned power generating station called the Hearn Generating Station in the so-called Portlands. It was a man-made island in Lake Ontario, which was about 7 minutes from downtown Toronto. It's basically all the rubbish and the dirt that was excavated when they built the subway and when they built the skyscrapers. So they dumped it into the lake, and it became this sort of industrial wasteland island. And on this island in the 50s, they built a gigantic power generating station, which was 3 times the size, or still is, 3 times the size of the Tate Modern. And you could put the Statue of Liberty upright in there. It's larger than Lincoln Center, the Metropolitan Museum, and the sort of combined. We did our fundraising gala there in 2015, and unbeknownst to me, there was a meeting of the entire senior team of the festival, where they tried to convince the head of the festival, the CEO, the administrative head of the festival, that she should tell me that we're not allowed to do this at the Hearn Generating Station. So, but we did, and it was a huge success. Oh, here, this was kind of cute, I thought, for Russia. You could actually drive into the building and then park in the building and then go over to your table. This was a performance that we did in a museum. Terence Coe did a performance in a beautiful public park, transforming the park into a winter landscape. 6 seniors from all over the world talked about their sex life. We did sort of a participatory orchestra in the largest sports arena where people gathered and played Ravel's Bolero for the first time together. We also did a project for eight people only, a collaboration between a great DJ and one of the greatest chefs in Canada in a guy's basement in a suburb of Toronto. He had built a train car in his basement, and we blindfolded people and then put them into his basement, and most of them thought they were going to travel somewhere, but they didn't. Sort of Los Carpinteros transformed the public square into a beach. This is a project, we did a collaboration with the New York Times. We did our fundraising gala in there again. Jeffrey Farmer, a Canadian artist who represented Canada at the Venice Biennale this year, did a piece in the public park. And this is a project with 1,000 participants on stage, staged by a Samoan choreographer called Lemmy Bonifazio. But somehow, all of this, I felt, did not really transform the city. Even though we were trying to be everywhere, you're sort of also at the same time, you're sort of nowhere. And it was also, I think, to a lot of people, it wasn't really clear what the festival was actually about, because we were doing so many different things. They didn't really make the connection between these different things. And so I talked to our board, and I came up sort of with this formula for the festival that I think all the projects needed to be able to be drawn back to, which was the idea of that we really present adventurous art and ideas in adventurous places. So it was really about this idea to discover new places, to transform places through the arts, and to transform people's minds through the arts, which is of course what we all want to do. So the ultimate adventurous space was the Hearn Generating Station. This place, 7 minutes away from the downtown Toronto, where nobody has been basically since it was shut down in the 80s, which was so far in people's minds, but so close physically. So I thought, what if we transformed this space? What if we gave a live proposal of what this building could be in the future? What if we transformed this space temporarily into the largest multi-arts center in the world? So we built a 1,200-seat theater in there. We built a 2,000-seat music stage and 5,000 people standing. We had the longest art gallery in the world. Here you see the turbine hall of the Hearn Generating Station, where we installed again the mirror ball, which by that time was not the largest mirror ball in the world anymore, but it became the largest mirror ball installed inside. And basically the principles, the idea really behind this transformation of the space was part of the talk that I gave yesterday. It was inspired by Neolithic caves. 50,000 years ago is when humans first created artworks in caves. They also lived in these caves. They manufactured in these caves. They had sex in these caves, probably. They danced in these caves. They made music in these caves. And there are no walls in these caves. So all these things happen in one gigantic, large, open space. And that was the same at the Hearn Generating Station. We had a 1,200-seat theater, 2,000-seat concert stage, multiple galleries. We had multiple restaurants, but there were no walls. So everything was happening in one space, and even when there was a performance going on, the space was always open. So audience could come in for free all the time and hear and see that there was a theater performance going on way in the back, or here there was a concert going on, but the space was still open. It was still an inviting space. We also had water and rain because it was an old building, so the roof was not completely solid. We also had a donor lounge, though, so rich people who donated money to the festival could have their, caviar. I wish we had caviar, and champagne. We had a beer garden outside. On the opening night, we actually did base jumping from the smokestack for the first time. I climbed the smokestack myself. It's about 100 meters tall. I did not jump down. It was very lonely to climb down again. We actually also lit up the smokestack for the first time. So after 40 years, for the first time, there was smoke coming out of the smokestack again. We had to get permission from the local airport. We had to tell the fire police. We had to tell my grandmother, basically, because, you know, what if anyone saw that there was smoke coming out of it again and thought that the place was burning down? We presented the National Theatre of Scotland in our 1,200-seat theatre. Here you see it. A dance piece on our music stage. This was sort of lines of people waiting, which is always my favorite thing as a producer. We did a collaboration with the Unsound Festival. We invited the Unsound Festival from Krakow to do a 2-day residency sort of within the festival. People even kissed. This is Sun performing. One of the important things for me of the festival was that we weren't an institution that was completely open, that had no walls, and that also meant that we invited other institutions into our space. I didn't want this to be an exclusive space. I wanted it to be an open space, and space that was not only about one idea and one artistic direction. So over 25 other cultural organizations in Toronto occupied space and time in the building. So we had the Design Exchange do an exhibition there. We had workout training, so you could come actually and work out in the space, and then afterwards you could go to the restaurant, then you could go to a theater play, then you could hear a concert, and then you could go clubbing, all without leaving the space. This was a project that we did with the Art Gallery of Ontario, children drawing classes. This was a concert by the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and the great thing about this was I didn't have to pay for any of it. They all did it. They all basically did it on their own dime. We sold the tickets for them. We gave them the ticket revenue, but we didn't pay for these other activities. Drag queens. We also lit up the smokestack for the first time ever. This was a restaurant that we did inside the control room. This is the control room. It's not Stanley Kubrick's set for 2001 Decade, which was voted the best new restaurant in Toronto by the national newspaper. Unfortunately, it only existed for 17 days. This was sort of the motto that it was, as I said before, it was really an attempt to challenge Toronto and to create this live proposal of what the future of this building could be. The Portlands, that huge area of wasteland where this is situated, is completely empty. Nothing is happening there. But there are plans within the city that in the next 20 years, probably about 50,000 people are going to live there. So there's going to be a new housing development there. And I fear maybe that we were actually even a little bit early with what we did there, because there is no one living there yet. We were maybe sort of a little bit ahead of our time. But this motto, "Don't look back," was sort of this idea that people enter into this space and don't think about the old Toronto, but think about the potential of the new Toronto. We invited Syrian refugees. We had First Nations doing introductions to projects and performances. More people waiting, people in performances. And we even had children. And that was really the beautiful thing about it, is that families came with their kids. We had 100,000 people come to the festival, but we only had about 35,000 tickets to sell. So the majority of the people didn't actually come to see a particular performance, but they came to experience the space. And that was really the most important and most interesting thing for me. On the last day, this was a performance, this was a piece by two Canadian artists who create sort of these live singing events. It started out in a pub because they wanted to, I guess they were drunk and they sort of started singing songs, and then they taught the audience a particular song, and this was 1,500 people who came together in the Hearn generating station to sing Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah together. They were taught the song, and then they sang the song together, sort of headlined by Rufus Wainwright, who's a Canadian singer-songwriter whose version of Hallelujah is very well known, even though every contestant for any sort of singing show or whatever has to cover the song at this time. There is a video, which maybe some of you have seen. Do you have it from yes? Do you want to? I mean, do you want to see it? Yeah, I really want it. Okay, Fyodor really. I'm sorry. It's really for Fyodor. He really. It will be a great final episode because I've already been to the Department of Culture of Moscow this afternoon and told them we're going to do this for the Arts Night. There you go. I mean, they would not accept the Hallelujah being a religious sex song, but. You know, I hope it's not going to be a Katyusha that you've been mentioned last night. Well, it's your choice. I'm not. It's not my decision. I can Google it. I can find it quickly here. Anyway, if that's too difficult, then let's forget about it. But anyone can Google it themselves, and it's just. You have it? Oh, we got it. All right, perfect. That would be such an amazing code to our conversation tonight, and. Did you finish? Yes, I did. Yes. Okay. All right. Did you think I didn't finish? Thank you. And so, я думаю, что мы посмотрим это видео напоследок, потому что оно очень хорошо говорит о том, как
because it speaks a lot about the way people gather together, and that's why any festival exists, and that's why we all work for people gathered together, for everything to change around. And when Rufus Wainwright invited 1,500 people to come to this abandoned station and to sing Hallelujah in a choir. Cohen was still alive, by the way, and he could see this recording. And now we see that this is the quintessence of the city, gathering together, hearing each other's breath, singing in a choir. The same song, they have all taught it beforehand, have all been taught it beforehand. They had different parts, and I think this is a good ending for our talk. We're not going to sing along here, but let's hear other people singing. I think we can fast forward to the singing itself, because it's longer than we can afford right now. Further, you can start with the middle. Where's the sound?
Yeah, it's amazing. Спасибо всем.
Thank you all.
Буквально.
Amen.
Вот. Доброго вечера.
Have a nice evening.